Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
How are you?
Always a great day.
Finally wore a T-shirt of a winning hockey team.
That's right.
It's only 45 years old. No big deal.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, so I did promise yesterday we would get 49 good San Francisco seconds from you.
49 good seconds.
I gave you 23 hours to think about it.
You did, I'll tell you what.
Emphasis on think.
Well, we are a week past the day I became a 49ers fan. When the Niners beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl, we were well more than a week past. Now, yesterday was the anniversary, unfortunately, of the Ravens 49ers Super Bowl. We forget about that one. But, when the 1988 season is when I jumped on the bandwagon, became a fan. And obviously that was the anniversary, just came up last week on that. And
this is the one where he threw the touchdown pass to John Taylor.
Right? So
it's the second 49ers.
And then,
Bengals.
Obviously, in Pennsylvania, week 3, one of my best games, one of the best games I ever saw as a fan. And I think as a 49er fan, you're going to remember it. As an Eagle fan, you love to forget it. They sacked Joe Montana 6-7 times in that first half. And he comes back, throws 4 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, and beats the Eagles at the Vet early in the season, 1989. That was where I became a diehard 49ers fan. So I had to go back to memory lane there, back to the glory days, in the words of Bruce Springsteen.
You know what? The Super Bowl 23 is the one you were referencing.
Yeah, against Bengals.
Penn State played Rhode Island that day in basketball in Kingston, and Bruce Blake had a big day. I think Bruce Blake had 30 points. And Penn State won. And we had to go back to Providence to get our plane, Green Airport.
Yeah.
And they had a room set up for us at the Marriott to watch the end of the game before we left. So all I saw was the fourth quarter of the game. Because, you do your game, you do the post-game show, the game, it spills over into whatever. Kingston is not next to Providence. Okay? All right. So it takes a while to get there. So I only saw the fourth quarter of the game. And if I recall, they completed a pass over the middle of the Jerry Rice.
Yeah, that was, yep.
And then I think there was a timeout.
Yeah, that was after there was a short pass after Rice that got to the timeout.
And Bruce says, "All right, guys, time to go." He looks over and goes, "Just kidding."
That was
it's like
that was like when I covered my first state championship, Central Bucks West Erie Cathedral Prep, and Bucks West blocks the punt to beat them. 2000 was the year. 1999 was the year going into 2000, and it was a 1-point game. Cathedral Prep has the ball, and the guy behind me says, I think if we all leave now, we can beat the crowd.
Right. It's like somebody's always kidding. Yeah, we can get out of here now. Right, Bruce is like, all right, time to go. I'm like, what? He goes, I'm just kidding. I thought to myself, that was pretty good. So I only saw the fourth quarter of that game, which obviously was the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was the one where they're in the huddle.
On Montana.
And Montana looks at Harris Barton, and he says, and isn't that John Candy over there? And Barton's like looking around like, what? Well, yeah, I guess. He says, how loose do you want the guy to be in the huddle?
Yeah, that's reason number 1 million and plenty wide. Yeah, Joe Montana was just the guy. There's no Joe Montana. I am probably not a 49ers fan. That was absolutely the reason I was a fan, and obviously I grew to love him over time, over the years, but Montana was without question or Superman.
Not a big Steve Young guy?
Young was I liked Young. Yeah, I grew to like Young, and I've always told the story. There was one 49ers game where they lost, where I smiled a little bit and it wasn't frowning, and that was the 1994 Week 2, where Montana beat them at Arrowhead. You couldn't root against. It was almost impossible. Fortunately, he retired in '95 because it was hard to root against Joe Montana, and I did. Obviously, it was 49ers played him, but that's the one game where it just you couldn't frown entirely because the guy that you grew up to just took his team down the field and beat the 49ers with probably one of the greatest defensive players I ever saw that some people tend to forget about, in Derek Thomas.
Derek Thomas,
absolutely incredible. Obviously, life cut short tragically, but absolutely one of the best defensive players I ever saw play the game.
He had a game against Penn State at Legion Field in 1988. That was just... I felt, the weird thing is that Eric Jonathan was the left tackle. And Thomas was in the back. Penn State could never get out of, the game ended up 8-3. Okay? And Tony Sacca couldn't get anything going because of the pressure. And the irony is that Eric Jonathan started in the NFL for several years. Just took him a while to get there. He actually transferred from Penn State to Bloomsburg. And you're like, Eric Johnson, he's at Bloomsburg. And all of a sudden you're looking like, he's in the NFL. Well. Very interesting. But I remember Derek Thomas that day. Because before that, they had Cornelius Bennett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Penn State actually did a decent job on Cornelius Bennett, right? Derek Thomas, they couldn't.
He was so fast, just so fast off the ball.
Because they got that safety. And it was like, again, Penn State was just bottled up at one end of the field the entire game. And it was like, oof.
He got a safety against Steve Young in that game too in '94. Derek Thomas, if I remember correctly. Yeah, him and Neil Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just absolutely 169 games at 126.5 sacks, 18 fumble recoveries, 45 forced fumbles, 3 for safeties. There you go. One was in the 49ers game. I remember that one. Just an incredible player. And absolutely, obviously died 33 years old. So that career was cut short.
Yeah. I would like to point out you've exceeded your 49 seconds.
Oh, well, yeah.
That was my way of saving the show from you.
Well, there you go. I'll tell you talk about Cornelius Bennett. Obviously, Penn State had one of their own in the '86 national championship team with that Bills defense and Shane Conlon. That Bills defense, I talk about Thomas not getting the credit he deserved. That Buffalo Bills defense that lost 4 Super Bowls doesn't get the credit they deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah, Conlon, Bennett, and obviously Bruce Smith. Darryl Talley was incredible on that team.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So, Jim Knowles will meet with the media today. And I don't think much is going to be talked about. I mean, like, for example, like Brian Tripp did a great job asking him questions. He had 8 minutes and they filled up the 8 minutes. That's for sure. What would I like to know? I'd like to know who his mentors were and have been, and the influences they've had on him. How he developed his own style as to what he wants to do. How important it is for him to know what personnel can and can't do in shaping the philosophy for whatever team he is coaching for. How long it takes for him to understand what they can and can't do. Things like that. I mean, look, and he has had great success everywhere he's gone. I don't care whether at Duke, Oklahoma State, Ohio State. And look, to be honest with you, I mean, as a head coach at Cornell, he did fine. I mean, it's not easy in the Ivy League. Cornell's resources are different than other schools in the Ivy League. The Cornell resources are a little bit different than Penn, a little bit different than Princeton, a little bit different than Harvard, for example, and maybe Yale in terms of like what their resources are. And he did a pretty good job there. So, you know, it's Jim has a reputation of like being in his office, really working out what he wants to do, and almost like emerging from there. Look, he went to St. Joe's Prep. He is a graduate of Cornell. He is highly, highly intelligent, and everybody will tell you that he is very intelligent in a wide range of areas. In a wide range of areas. I mean, not just football. I mean, he seems like the type of guy, if you could talk to him about a variety of things, he'd know something about it. So I find him to be a fascinating person. I've never, today when I see him, I'll probably just quickly introduce myself, right? And then, get out of the way. No. Right. Now, I'll just introduce myself to him, and that'll be probably about it. And just let him do his thing. I mean, James has a history, and I can just say this from being out there all the time. It doesn't mean he doesn't go over the defensive side of the ball, but a lot of times when he's over on the defensive side of the ball, he'll say something to the defensive players or whatever. A lot of times he'll be talking to the scout team guys, like do this, to challenge the defense. But he pretty much lets the defensive coordinator do their deal. It doesn't mean during the course of the game he won't say to them, hey, by the way, we're going to go for it on fourth down here. So in other words, I've already told Andy, hey, think a third down is second down. But he'll tell the defensive coordinator, hey, by the way, just so you know, you're ready for it. Right? I've already told Andy fourth down in the right situation years ago. That way you be prepared in case it doesn't work. Like fourth down at their own 19 against SMU. Right? He told Tom, hey, look, we're going to go for it. And it turned out that time Penn State didn't get it.
Right.
And then Dominic DeLuca had the
second interception.
Had the interception where he deflected in the air and picked it off. You're like, you got it. Right? Which was remarkable. But like even on the fake punt, like on the fake punt at Minnesota, hey, look, he would have told Tom, hey, the fake is on. Right, just so you know, just in case, be ready because the ball would be at the 34-yard line or right around that area. Well, they ran the fake punt; it worked. But the defensive coordinator knew they were doing it just in case. 34 yards later, or 32 yards later, whatever it was, that worked. And so it'll be interesting to hear Jim talk today about a wide range of things. You can just tell he is one of those very intelligent, focused individuals on what they do. JT Tuileamalo referred to him as Batman. He emerged from the Bat Cave, he said, and he'd be like, in other words, they'd run through a wall for him. So, hey, you're talking about a guy that's raised by a Philadelphia police officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
That's a tough job.
Which there's an intensity that goes with that.
Mm-hmm.
especially up in North Philly, Northeast Philly. All I know is that my ventures in the Northeast Philly. Now I've flown in and out of the Northeast Philly airport, the one, of course, where that Learjet took off from. A long time ago, I did. We flew in and out of there on charters for Temple games, things like that. But the other times I've gone up there is that Dick Girardi loves Joe's Steaks. And there used to be a place, it was on Torresdale, right? And in the area of, not to be disparaging here, the actual name of the cheesesteak place was called Chinks. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then when Joe bought it, he changed it to Joe's Steaks.
Yep.
Right. Well, that was up on Torresdale in Northeast Philly, and now Joe just has one place, and it's in Fishtown.
Fishtown. Yep.
Yep. So, in fact, we January 4th, the night before the Indiana game, we went over to Fishtown and had cheesesteaks. It was really good. I love Joe's Steaks. And Joe couldn't be there with us. Last time we went in there, Joe sat with us the entire time. Nice. He's a great dude. But because, he's tight with Dick, and it's great.
Yeah, there are some great owners. Angelo's is another good one.
Yeah.
Great owner, great guy. Absolutely.
You know what? I've never been to Gino and Pat's. Never have been.
I would say.
Because every time I've gone in there, it's always been, because Dick was always loyal to Joe's. So that's why we've always gone there. And the cheesesteak is phenomenal.
Incredible.
I mean, now, I'm not comparing it to anything else. All I know is that that's a phenomenal cheesesteak. Yeah. But I went up to Northeast Philly to Joe's with him many times. Yeah. All right, now we just go to Fishtown. So, but this is going to be. I'm anxious to see what he does with it in conjunction with what Andy does with the offense, and I think that is going to be interesting to see what he does. Not just on basic downs, but how does he handle third down? We've seen Penn State use the 3-down lineman. Now they had Carter and they moved him around. You're not going to have that piece to move around any longer in there. How's his approach going to be? How many DBs does he want to put out there on third down? Does he want to just stick with 5? Does he want to go with 6?
Sure.
Because as a guy that's really smart, which he is. What's my best personnel?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
You can't sit there and say, I'll pick a number. Say you're on a team like, hey, we want to play 4 defensive linemen, and I don't have 4 defensive linemen are good enough. I mean, how do you think, Mouse Davis, when he put together the run and shoot offense? Yep. Well, you know why he put it together, don't you? Not because he was some wild, crazy, let's throw it downfield genius. He looked around and he says, unfortunately for him, he had no tight ends on the team. I mean, that was the genesis of it. He says, I don't have any tight ends. How do I work around this? Well, we'll just do this run and shoot thing. Right. Sometimes necessity dictates how you play.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the other part of it, too, and coaches are never going to tell you. Well, I want to say they're never going to tell you this. They often shy away from it. What you do a lot of times, too, you bring a guy like Jim Knowles in, and it's very similar to players where the Colts brought Adam Vinatieri in. Now, this is not let me just clarify, this is not the reason Penn State brought him in. But, obviously the Colts brought Adam Vinatieri, 49ers bring in Ken Norton. You get that extra adage to, okay, what is Ohio State's tendency here in this spot? What does Ohio State have a tendency to do in games? Now, that's not a frequent thing, but game week, you will pick the brain at times.
Right.
As a coach.
Look, everybody's moved around all over the place. Okay.
Yeah. And everything's changed.
Everywhere you look, there's more rollover in assistant coaches.
Absolutely.
Now than ever before.
Sure.
Now, that's why it's interesting that on this particular staff, there's only one change this year. After 3 coordinators that were brought in last year, All right. This is the only change, and it's because Tom left.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't drive Tom to the airport. Tom left. He took the job at Clemson. Okay?
Yep.
That's fine. That's his choice. It's his opportunity. It's his life.
Yeah.
Right? So James went out and identified the person he thought was the best person for this job.
Yeah.
Right? He went to his athletic director, and Pat Kraft said, okay, if you think that's the best guy for the job, go get him. He said, what about money? He says, he's the best person for the job in your eye. Go get him. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what they've done. Sure, it's a splash hire.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no question about that. But Jim would be the first one to tell you. And again, I don't know him. I've only passed him in the hallway because they're always on the same floor I am, whether it's in Beaver Stadium or it's at Ohio State. I've only passed him in the hallway. I've never once even said a word to him.
Yeah. Same.
Right? And for some odd reason, he didn't say a word to me. No, because he didn't know who the heck who is that person?
Yeah.
Right? And also extremely focused on what he's doing, just like I'm allegedly focused on what I do.
But the thing with assistant changes, I think there's one of two. I've always looked at assistant coaching changes as one of two ways. One, you were either a complete mess, where you're going through change after change because your team is in disarray. Or the second, and this is where Penn State is, the success is leading to this. Where and Ohio State, same thing. Where success is leading to these guys getting bigger opportunities. And that's where you look at it with assistants. There's a reason why NFL quarterbacks have 5 coordinators in 5 years. Your team is a disaster. Yeah. Or the opposite, your team is very successful. You're having to constantly replace coordinators because of the job you were doing and the success you were building as a team or a program.
Well, Joe Moorhead becomes a head coach.
Sure.
Ricky Ronnie becomes a head coach. Brent Pry becomes a head coach. Manny Diaz becomes a head coach. I mean, you're losing people because they're becoming head coaches.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the way the profession is supposed to work.
Supposed to work, exactly.
Okay? That's how it's supposed to work.
Yes.
Okay? Joe Moorhead wasn't fired. He became the head coach of Mississippi State. Ricky Ronnie succeeded him. He wasn't fired. He became the head coach at Old Dominion. Yeah. Brent Pry wasn't fired. He became the head coach of Virginia Tech. Manny Diaz wasn't fired at Penn State. He became the head coach at Duke. That's how it's supposed to be.
Promoted. Yes. Yep.
Just like James Franklin had been the offensive coordinator at Maryland, became the head coach of Vanderbilt.
Sure.
Yep. I mean, that's how it's supposed to work.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's fine.
And your program builds it for that.
Right.
That's where the success is.
Your program success leads to individual success. That's fine. Again, that's the way it's supposed to work. And, I mean, a guy like Jim, for example, say he wanted to stay here, right? There are advantages to being a coordinator today. Number one, you're not taking a vow of poverty, okay? Unlike you.
That's right.
Okay? I mean, you're just kind of stuck around for no apparent reason. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
You can make good money, and guess what? Do you have to deal with NIL? No.
Well, no. If you're going to the NFL, no. Yeah.
I'm saying if you're the coordinator,
right.
Do you
have to deal with? No.
Do you have to deal with NIL? That's the head coach's responsibility. The long list of responsibilities the head coach has, the coordinator, for the most part, worries about football.
Yep.
Football.
Yep.
Right. And there's a lot of people that will tell you that, like, when they leave, and I remember talking to Tom about this, like leaving the head coaching job at Indiana. Now, he was told to leave, right? But then becoming a coordinator, he says, all I have to do is worry about coaching ball.
Big reason.
And that was his quote. I'm just using his quote. He said that's all I. He says, there's a pleasure in that. I can tell for James Franklin that the practice field, in so many ways, is like a sanctuary. You go out there for the 2 hours and you're coaching football. It's what James Franklin loves to do. Yes. Relationships. He builds relationships.
Sure.
It's huge. It's big. But one of the reasons he's out there coaching football is not just the relationships and what he can do, because he loves the sport. He loves being out there.
Absolutely.
Right? The number of times, if I had $100 for every time Joe Paterno said to me, Steve, I wish I could just coach football.
Yeah.
Because that's what they love to do.
That's what they love to do. Exactly.
Right? Jim Knowles, you can tell, loves to coach football. Loves to do it. Loves to go in and, break it down. Utilize personnel, the science of it.
Yeah.
Right? Perfect for a mind like that. Andy Koltanicki, right? He'll ask her, hey, show me the big plays from this past weekend, NFL, whatever, or college football. Let me just see what they did or didn't do, right? If there's something we're doing or not doing. Because his mind is constantly going.
Right.
You can't come up with some of the elements he did with Tyler Warren unless that mind, the gears are turning the entire time, right? I've worked hard over the years of trying to at least get a gear to move with you.
That's right. But the one
you didn't expect that one, did you? You didn't expect that one. You're like,
sure where you're going. But the one thing,
sorry, I couldn't help myself.
I walk into it well. I thought the one.
No, I'm telling the audience. There's nothing personal here. I love the guy.
But the one thing you talk.
Come on, get yourself together.
The one thing you talk about there, though, that you tie together, and so many people just can't get to that second gear is talk about Joe saying he wishes he could just coach football. Talk about James having that as a sanctuary.
I'm saying that's my opinion, James. James has never said that.
Never said it. But the reality is, they have to embrace the other stuff, and that is what I think coaches will do that makes them great coaches. I think that was the one criticism I had. Again, Bill O'Brien, you can put up in Penn State history in a big way for everything he had to go through.
Sure. No,
absolutely.
Bill gets Bill was the right person at the right time.
Absolutely. But he is a better coordinator because of that exact reason. I think he is the guy that will coach football. His focus is football. I don't know, fully understood the Penn State mentality that James Franklin does. I think when you look at what, this is like Joe Paterno obviously understood it without question better than anybody in the history of the game.
Right.
James Franklin now, I think, has that same
James Franklin worked really, really, really hard to understand what made Penn State tick.
Right.
He worked really hard to embrace,
and he gets it.
Right. Okay, tell me about the blue band. Tell me about what they mean, why they mean something. Tell 100%. Me about the ROTC on campus, what they mean, why they mean. So when we do Military Appreciation Day, what do we do here? Tell me about what makes Thon work and tick and everything that goes with that.
Yes.
I mean, he's always tried to do everything he could over the years. Like quarterback club. When he started the quarterback club,
fundraiser period,
it took convincing. Like, well, what do I want to do this on Wednesday for? I got games to get ready for. I got to take an hour on a Wednesday to go over and talk to quarterback club. Right, which goes back into what Larry Stewart and those guys back in the '60s, I believe, started it. And then he went and he realized, wait a minute. He loves doing it. Right? It just took a little bit for him to see why it was important to do it. And the second he understood the importance of seeing it firsthand, he embraced it. So he's worked so hard to understand the Penn State culture, but at the same time, the Penn State culture has understood that, wait a minute, what made Joe great, there's so many lists that made Joe great. There's a long list of things that made Joe great. One of them was Joe was one of the great forward thinkers I've ever seen in my lifetime. Right? James, in his own way, is a great forward thinker.
Routine-based, especially. Yep.
Okay? He may be somebody that's in a routine as to what he does, but look at how he has adapted to the modern way of doing things. Okay? And I don't just mean on the field. I mean off the field. Okay?
Yep.
How do I make the transfer portal work? I want to be a heavy development team, but at the same time, if there's a portal acquisition we can make, right? Not acquisitions like the long list of guys.
No, we're going to plug in a guy that is going to fit.
Can we get 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7 transfer portals to fill a spot of need?
What's he going to do to help my team have need? Exactly.
How do I create my culture here in such a way where I don't have mass portal exits, especially of guys that are critical players? Somebody that's mired on the depth chart, I understand why they want to go. Right? I understand why, for example, Jerry Cross. Jerry Cross, I think, is smart enough to look out there and go, Khalil Dinkins, Luke Reynolds, Andrew Rappelier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can see it.
Yeah.
Right? So Jerry ends up transferring. I don't know where Jerry ended up transferring to. That part I don't know. I know he ended up someplace else. Right. But Penn State doesn't have usually mass exodus in the transfer portal because of the culture James has created here. Right. And he worked hard on that culture. Right. And he works hard on the communication part every day. But his adaptability has put Penn State in the position that they're in right now. Now the latest part is, and he's harped about the money part over and over again because he's needed to. He had to, is the only way to compete. It's the only way to compete these days. You need the money.
Absolutely.
He has known it for a long time. Penn State was playing from behind on NIL. Penn State is still fighting. Penn State's NIL situation is way better than it was, but still it can always be better. But he knew in the adaptability part of it, you had to embrace it. He knew in the adaptability part of it, okay, I'll be selective, but let's go into the portal where need be. Right? He is the modern coach with a lot of old-fashioned values.
Yes.
His old-fashioned values fit Penn State. The number of times I hear him after a practice talk about academics, over and over and over again. He knows that while every single person that comes into the program has ambitions of going to the NFL.
Sure.
Every person. I signed with Penn State. It's my next step. Right? Then reality sets in. And for some of them, it sets in 2 weeks into the training camp. Happens. Right? But he knows 97% of them are not going to make the league.
Right.
Well, if you get your degree, you took advantage of your education at Penn State. And you're gonna be fine in life because you did. Right? He's understood the money part of it to this point where he has set up, like, hey, how to do your taxes.
Yeah.
He has set up. Okay,
Absolutely.
He has set up the finances part of it as well, because in other words, how to handle your money, how to handle it. Because the last thing he wants is he doesn't want the story in the Athletic or whatever it happens to be about, gee, this player blah 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 blew all his money blah blah blah. The former Penn State player, right? He doesn't want that sentence in there. He wants them to have the best shot in life. So it's not just the football part of it.
No, it's understanding everything else.
But he knew in the adaptability of it, you needed a better training room. He knew in the adaptability of it, you needed hot tub, cold tubs. He knew in the adaptability of it, you needed sports performance. He knew in the adaptability of it, the ability to take data and translate it into a better practice. All of this. That's why he's always looking at best practices all the time. right? And then one time he acquiesced and they did winter workouts in the afternoon, right? One year. Went back to early mornings the next year because that's the way it's done.
Yeah.
Okay. Can he be a disciplinarian? Yeah.
Need to be.
Right? There are times you have to make that hard decision. Right? And he does. I mean, ask yourself why Saeed Blacknall and Manny Bowen didn't play in the Rose Bowl. I mean, do you think those two guys would have helped against USC that day in a game that was 3 points, especially when B. Bell got hurt? But he did he did the right thing. I mean, that's just an example.
Yep.
I can remember one day Micah Parsons coming out and they were told what they were supposed to wear to practice that day, and he didn't have the right gear on. Well, he got disciplined for it. It didn't matter that was the best player he had.
Yeah.
Did Micah Parsons ever come out with the wrong gear again?
Exactly.
Nope. Right. You get disciplined for it. Okay. You can still have old-fashioned values while being adaptable to the modern way of doing things and being adaptable to the modern athlete.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to go over and see Jim Knowles. As much as I enjoyed the intellectual conversation with you.
That's right.
Especially that part about Joe Montana and you becoming a Kansas City Chiefs fan.
Oh, you bet. Sure.
When some guy wore number 19.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't going to wear Lenny Dawson's number.
No. Joe never had a Fresca and a cigarette at halftime. I'm pretty sure on that one.
Lenny Dawson was a great broadcaster, by the way.
Yeah, he was.
TV.
Yeah.
Radio.
Sure was.
The radio he was with Mitch Holthus for years.
Yep.
So we're going to have Merrill Reese on the show on Friday.
Nice.
Because tomorrow's the late signing period. Actually, James Franklin is going to be on the show tomorrow on BTN.
Nice.
From 3 to 5. What time he's on, I don't know. But, Bryce Underwood is going to be a part of the show as well. Bryce Underwood was throwing out T-shirts at the Penn State Michigan basketball game. Your people.
That's right.
Yeah. Was the last time you guys won
Last time the Niners won the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
94.
Well, that's a long time ago.
It is. Too long ago.
Yes. Yeah. I was just asking, the audience always is very curious about your viewing habits. Yeah. Oh, boy. You're also the kind of guy that thinks Punxsutawney Phil's real. All right, so...
A hotel room literally for that is more expensive than it is for the Super Bowl.
I know. I think they had 50 or 60,000 people there.
Yeah.
Some crazy number.
Yeah.
Okay. Au revoir.